Israel has come to me, and there's our gom, and moreover, and even, I have seen, direct object, ha-lakatz. What's lakatz mean? Oppression, affliction.
Their affliction.
Okay, here it's just the affliction. There's no suffix on it. But what affliction? It's further described by an asher. Asher is the relative pronoun that introduces what kind of a clause? A relative clause, a who or which clause, right? Okay, this is the affliction which the Egyptians are afflicting, direct object, them. Hebrew loves to do this. Hebrew loves to make the direct object of a verb the noun form of that verb. We wept a great weeping. He cried, he shouted a great shout. They rejoiced a great rejoicing. He feared a great fear. This is bad form in English, right? English likes to avoid repetition like this. Hebrew loves that kind of association. And so what do we have here? What is the direct object grammatically within the relative clause here that begins with asher, the end of verse 9? What is the direct object of that participle lokatzim, which the Egyptians are oppressing them? Well, otam is the first, right? This is actually a little tricky here. There's sort of two direct objects. The Egyptians are oppressing an oppression them. And we would say here probably with which they are oppressing them, just to make it work in English. But my point here, it's more direct in a lot of other contexts, but this is the same kind of thing. And I want you to know the name for this. Giving you a lot of names for things here, aren't I? This is called a cognate accusative. Grammatically, what is the function of the accusative most often in a Hebrew sentence? The direct object. So this is just a fancy way of saying that the direct object is a cognate of the verb. What's a cognate? It's two words that are formed from the same root. Two words that are formed from the same root. And in this case, what's the cognate accusative here in verse 9? Am I spelling this right? Lakatz. Yeah.
So that's the only direct object? Does it sound like you said there's a couple of direct objects? Right?
Well, the other direct object is oppressing, otam, them.
Okay.
See how that works? Technically, in this particular context, that's not a great example of a cognate accusative because what is the first et halakatz the direct object of? Grammatically, the et halakatz there, direct object, the oppression, what's it the direct object of? What verb?
Saw.
What's that?
Saw. I saw.
Yeah. I have seen, I saw. I have seen what? The oppression. What oppression? The oppression which the Egyptians are oppressing them. So it actually is a double direct object. It's the direct object first of I saw, and then within the relative clause, it's one of two direct objects of the participle. But that gets pretty complicated. And just think of cognate accusative in phrases like feared a great fear, rejoiced a great rejoicing. wept a great weeping.
So that relevant clause that the Egyptians oppressed them, oppress and them are both direct objects.
The verb there is the participle. The Egyptians are the subject. The Egyptians are oppressing, but how does that relate to halakats? And here's where it gets kind of complicated. We're talking about the oppression which the Egyptians oppressed. So if you just took off the otam at the end, it's further describing that oppression. What oppression? The oppression which the Egyptians oppressed. And then it further clarifies who's being oppressed. Another direct object, otam, them. And notice the plural here. So my people can have a singular referent, or here it has the plural, them, otam. All right, let's keep marching along here.
Isn't the participle? Participle's plural, so that would make the direct object plural too, right?
No, the participle is going to agree with its subject in number, which is Mitzrayim here, right?
Yeah.
So actually the participle could be either singular or plural, because you can view Egypt as singular or plural. All right, verse 10. Verse 10 is pretty straightforward with the exception of the hotse. So what's it say here? And now, what's lakah? John, what's lakah?
It's a call imperative halak.
Good, it's the call imperative of halak. Halak acts like a first yod, so it loses its first letter. What's left of its imperative is just lake. What's the extra ah on the end there? The imperative should be lake, but in fact, most often you'll see it like this, lakah. What do we call that hay on the end?
Directional hay?
It's not the directional hay. There's a number of reasons to have extra hays floating around. It's also not paragogic hay, which just means a hay stuck on the end of a form for no particular reason. This has a reason.
If it's imperative, isn't that?
Imperatives like to have a comma's hay on the end, and we call it a volative hay. You see it most often, or most consistently, on the cohortative form. Cohortative hay, right? But imperatives like to get them too. So this is lake with a volative hay. Oftentimes, lake, or lakah here, just has the sense of come. Kind of like we would say, come on. Or even hey, or something like that. It's kind of an attention-getting word. It's not necessarily a command to go. Things like God saying in Isaiah 1, come, let us reason together. Okay? It's just saying, hey, come on, let's reason together. Though your sins are like scarlet, they'll be white as snow. And sometimes it will even use the imperative twice in a row. Lake lakah, come, go. It's saying, come on now, go. But here it actually is functioning in this context as go, right? That's the key word here. And now, go. And Sean, what's that next form? Va'esh lakah. Va'esh lakaka.
I will send you.
I will send you, masculine singular. Good. And notice the form here. It's an imperfect, right? I will send. It has a simple vav on the front of it. I should say vav plus simple schwa. Vav plus simple schwa plus the imperfect is different than a vav consecutive imperfect. So this is not and I sent you. It's and I will send you. And we discussed before, Bartel talks about this in chapter 24, what's the particular nuance of a simple vav plus imperfect after an imperative? Free cardinal tickets for whoever. Just kidding.
Do that question again.
Okay. This is take a look at this. Is this the third word of the verse? Yeah. This is a simple schwa, vav plus simple schwa, before an imperfect form, after an imperative. It's a common combination in Hebrew, and it indicates the intended result of the imperative. simple vav plus simple schwa before the imperfect after an imperative indicates the intended result of that imperative. It works a little less obviously here than in some contexts, but the sense is go in order that I may send you, would be the real wooden way to translate it. Or even, go in order that I may send you. Go and I will send you is also fine in this particular context. To Pharaoh, and then what does Hod say? Before, what's Hod say?
Go and I will send you, and you will lead out my people.
Okay, you will lead out. Hod say, what's that verb?
It's
Yatzah.
Play, is it Hippo?
Good. Hithiel gets that ho. Anytime you see ho at the beginning of a form, it's probably going to be a Hithiel first yod. Those first yods like to become a whole and bob in the Hithiel. So it's from Yatzah to go out, but this is Hithiel. So Hithiel makes it not go out, but lead out, bring out, take out.
Hifel makes what?
The Hithiel makes it causative. So Yatzah, to go out, becomes cause to go out, or lead out, bring out. What form is this, though? It's a simple vav on the front. It's not an imperfect. There's no imperfect performative. It's got a hey performative.
It's imperative.
Imperative. Are we happy with that? Imperative?
Oh, which Joseph, Cortative,
It's not Jessup. Jessup would have a yod, a imperfect performative on it.
Is it an infinitive contract?
It's no. but it's a good guess. Infinitive constructs get a hey performative also in the Hithiel. This is one of those really fine points that basically to nail it down you need to go back and look at the irregular charts in Bartel and remember that the infinitive construct in the Hithiel keeps its Hirik Yod infix. So it's not that. The perfect also keeps its Hirik Yod infix generally. So what are we left with the hey performative? The imperative. The imperative. Second masculine singular imperative. Lead. Out. So he's told him, go so that I may send you to Pharaoh, and lead out. Notice the little A on the Hotsei there. You guys see that? If you have BHS, you'll see the little footnote A. If you go down into the critical apparatus there, at the bottom of the page, what are we looking for when we go to that critical apparatus? First, we have to remember what verse we were in. What number verse were we in?
10.
10. So we go down and find 10. Then we find A. There's only one entry for 10, so it's A. It always starts with A. And you have three symbols there. The squiggly line symbol looks like a curly Q. Stands for the why am I blank? The Samaritan Pentateuch. The Samaritan Pentateuch, the alternate version of the first 5 books. The G, the script G, stands for the Greek tradition of texts of the Old Testament, which would be what we would call the Septuagint. And the fancy V stands for, any guesses? Vulgate, the Latin tradition. All of those agree in putting a ta on the end of this form. How would a ta on the end of the form change slightly its form? The meaning stays pretty much the same.
Feminine versus masculine.
Ta on the end of a verbal form, not feminine, ta on the end of a verbal form. Katal, katala, then katal ta, katalti.
Person.
Second person. Second person. And it makes it a perfect, a vav consecutive perfect. But it's the same thing, because when you've had imperatives, this is an important thing to remember. When you've had imperatives and you come to a vav consecutive perfect, it's just a wild card. It's another imperative in sense. So it's just, either way, the translation would be, and bring out, direct object, my people, the sons of Israel from Egypt. Alright. Last point, as the bell's still ringing, I just want to get to the key in verse 11. And Moses said, this is straightforward, and Moses said to God, me, Anoki, who am I? Ki, I will go to Pharaoh, and ki, I will lead the children of Israel from Egypt. Lead out the children of Israel from Egypt. What is the function of those keys? Now, he asked the question, who am I because? No.
Emphatic.
Who am I? That works, but is this indirect speech? Is it, and he said that, or and he saw that? No, so it's not the that we've learned, the speaking or the perceiving that. What's the third use? When or if. Who am I if I should go? Who am I when I should go? Not really. Emphatic. Who am I? Indeed, I will go. That didn't really work either. What do you do when the main things that you've learned, none of them seem to cut it? You go and you look at the longer list of possibilities. And if you look in Arnold and Choi, for this one, what are you going to find? You're going to find one use called result, and it ends up being translated that. So it sounds kind of like the speaking or the perceiving.